Here in the studio, I have my friend, the magic man of mortgages. His name is Phil Forbes. He's with Warsaw Federal, and they do it all, and they work weekends. So just call them anytime, 513-374-7133. He is really into real estate. He's a real estate investor. You're on your second or third home, fourth home, fifth home right now? Sixth home.
Yep.
But he's very passionate about the real estate industry. So we want to talk about, I know my wife's brother got this postcard. Now, he's lived in his house for 20-some years, but he got this postcard. It's a little misleading. It's like, okay, so if you own a home, if you bought a house or sold a house, you could be part of this class action lawsuit and you can win. You can get back thousands and thousands of dollars. Not true. Ketchmark and his crew, the highfalutin attorneys out of New York that are devising all this, they get 40% plus expenses. So if you take all the plaintiffs involved and you whittle it down, you might get $12.25.
Yeah.
So what does this really mean to buyers? Does it affect your business at all? Have you noticed anything in the last couple of weeks?
We see a difference in the purchase contract, and a lot of times, so you were talking about disclosures, right?
Yes.
And, we want to see the disclosures, right? So if somebody's, let's say somebody's buying a house, there's that Ohio property disclosure. We want to know whether or not, the house has, if it says, foundation is crumbling, right, on the Ohio. I mean, somebody would be required, if they thought the foundation was crumbling, they would be required to disclose that.
Yes.
Well, if we're going to finance the property, we kind of know what's on. You know what I mean? If it says something like that, we kind of need to know it because that obviously has an influence on the value of the property,
absolutely,
et cetera. Anyway, so
or if your shed burnt down in the backyard.
There you go. So now what we want to actually we will look for that commission agreement. So, we had a contract come in and the contract specified that the seller was to pay $2,000 towards the buyer's agent's commission, right? Well, we wanted to see that agreement to see whether or not that was all the money that was due. Because it was silent as to what the total commission was. It simply said that the contract that the seller was going to pay the first $2,000 of it. So then we want to see that commission agreement, because if there's other money that the seller or the buyer is required to come to the table with, we have to verify that money, et cetera. So it's added another form to what we look for. Yeah. And we're pretty form heavy.
I told my broker a couple of weeks ago, I said, now I'm not different because I've been using buyer agency contracts for 22 years.
Yeah.
And in that buyer agency contract, ladies and gentlemen, what happens is you, the buyer, agree to work with me, and I agree to do certain things for you.
Right.
And I don't get paid until you get the keys to your house. So I'm footing the bill the whole way right up until closing. And you're committing to making sure that I get paid what we agree with. And then if the seller is offering any kind of compensation, then that would be negotiated in the purchase contract. But what was misleading, what led up to this lawsuit, is in our MLS, we were posting what the co-op fee was going to be. So here's what happens. A buyer agent that didn't use, and I'll tell you what, 95% of buyer agents never use a buyer agency contract. I was one of a very few. So they didn't have any kind of relationship, legal relationship for a client-agent relationship in a contract that states that the buyer is committing to making sure that their agent gets paid a certain amount of dollars, a percentage or a certain amount of dollars. So they would go in the MLS, they would look on the MLS, and if the seller is only offering 1 or 1.5 or 2%, guess what? They're not even going to tell their buyer about that house. That's misleading. That's against the code of ethics. That's steering.
Yep.
And that's been rumbling for years and years. Last 10 years, the DOJ's been threatening to come after us for doing that. And that's not a legal practice. So when I have a contract with a buyer for a certain amount the buyer's saying, we will pay you. We will also authorize you to try and collect it from the seller. And if the seller comes up short, we'll make up the difference.
Yep.
That's the way it should be. I mean, commissions have always been negotiable. My fee's not negotiable. I mean, I have to work. I mean, now I've got to pay a deductible and get a new shed and get my yard fixed and the tree.
Right.
Life goes on, right?
Yep.
But that's the whole gist of the fact. So if you got one of these postcards in the mail, and it's got a lot of print on the back of the postcard, small print, all about this settlement, just throw it away. It's just, it's really business as usual as far as I'm concerned. It's the way it should have been for a long, long time. But anyhow.